If you're living in the US, but you're thinking about moving to Europe in the next year, this video is for you. I spent the last 25 years living around the world, traveling to 33 European countries and helping more than 1,000 people move abroad. In this video, I'm going to give you the brutally honest advice I wish someone had told me before my first move. Also, what's very different in Europe compared to America, and whether you'll like it there, so you know exactly what to expect before your move. When you first arrive in a new country, the bread tastes better, the streets are prettier, even coffee feels cinematic. And you genuinely cannot believe that people get to live like this all the time. That feeling naturally happens when you experience a new culture, and it's called the honeymoon phase. But this honeymoon phase does fade away, and what comes next is the dip. And this is something that maybe you have experienced in your travels before, especially if you've stayed outside of your home country or hometown for quite some time. One time I was staying in Hungary, and I was in Budapest and sitting on the Danube River at sunset, watching the most amazing scenery around me and seeing all of these beautiful couples walk by. And I didn't speak any Hungarian, and I didn't really know anyone in the city at the time. And I just kind of felt like this sense of loneliness there, and kind of like, what am I doing here? Do I fit in? Even though my grandfather is half Hungarian. And that's where the dip comes in. It can kind of hit you at any moment after the rose-colored glasses come off. And it's where you feel a little bit awkward, a little bit lonely, a bit uncertain, and in some cases feeling depressed about where you're living in the world. The highlight reels on Instagram and TikTok only show the honeymoon phase, but the dip happens off camera because it's not glamorous. It doesn't make you click, and it doesn't sell the dream. So Americans show up abroad, hit the dip a few months in, and assume something has gone wrong, when in reality, it's all just part of the process. The first thing I want you to know going into this is that the dip doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It just means that the honeymoon phase has run out and things are kind of leveling out, and you're starting that daily life and routine that you went there for. And that's the next thing to really think about, is that those first 6 months, you have a lot on your to-do list. It's a time where you're going to find your bearings, figure out the public transport, register with the municipality, open a bank account, get your healthcare set up, and really rebuild your entire phone book from scratch. You'll need to find a dentist, a doctor, a hairdresser, a carpet cleaner, a gardener. It's like every single person that you have on speed dial in your hometown is gone, and now you need to find their replacement in a country where you might not speak the language. When I lived in the UK, I went 6 months without a dental cleaning because the private wait times were longer than my visa. So I just gave up and decided to do it when I got to my next destination. But the number one most difficult thing in every country that I help people move to, besides the visa, is actually the housing. I've done thousands of property searches all around the world in many different countries, and I can tell you, it never gets any easier. Every property search is a challenge, and that's why I always match my relocation clients with local property experts in each destination. But around the 6th month is when you really start to settle in. This is when you don't need Google Maps anymore. You know where your favorite coffee shop is, and you even start to get accustomed to like the sales at the grocery store and which days have which outdoor markets. But that's right around the time another annoying part of living abroad starts to kick in, and that's around thinking about filing your taxes. So something that I didn't know when I first moved abroad, and you might not know either, is that US citizens are taxed on their worldwide income. So regardless of where you live in the world, if you are a US citizen, you technically have to file a tax return. I'm no accountant, but this is something that has a lot of misinformation in the expat community. So a lot of people don't know that they have to file, and then other people are confused about what their tax burden is in the country that they're moving to. So we always connect our relocation clients with local and international accountants, so you have the right advice from the US side as well as the local side in your destination. And this is super important. It took me many years of doing things the wrong way, wasting thousands of dollars, lots of time and stress, and going through a lot of different accounting firms before I found the right one that I could rely on to file my taxes properly. So I'll go ahead and link to one of the firms that I know and trust on the screen. You can also get a discount with them, and that will help you plan things from a US tax perspective. They can share with you about things like the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, which if you're currently earning an income from a job, you can actually deduct up to, this year it's around $133,000 that you would typically have to pay income taxes on. But of course, always consult with your accountant. And actually, the other day, I just met somebody who's been living in Costa Rica for 5 years, and they didn't even know that the FEIE existed. So they've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars in taxes that they didn't have to because they're living outside of the country. So make sure that you get the right advice, because this is not something that they teach you in school. The US governmental school system is certainly not teaching you how to leave the country and pay less taxes. And like taxes, another assumption that a lot of Americans get wrong, especially when they move to Europe, is regarding healthcare. Now, a lot of people think that either the healthcare is free or it's going to be super expensive like it is in the US. And the truth is that neither are exactly true. Americans are often surprised to find that private health insurance in most of Europe runs around 100 to 200 euro per month per person. Now, I currently spend over $600 a month for a catastrophic plan on my US healthcare, and a lot of my clients spend $1,000 or more. So if you're an American who's been quietly grinding through a $2,000 or $3,000 a month family premium and a $7,000 or $10,000 deductible, the European private market is not what you think it is. It's actually a fraction of what you're probably paying now, and it almost always covers more than a US catastrophic plan does. Secondly, a lot of people assume European healthcare is free from day one, but this really depends on the visa you're on, the country you move to, and how long you've been there. Every country has its own waiting period for the public system, its own registration and reimbursement model. So in the Netherlands, you could get set up on the healthcare system relatively quickly, but in France, it could take up to a year to be registered and active. And in most countries, you also need a local bank account before you register. There can also be waiting lists for getting assigned to a doctor or booking an appointment. So free healthcare upon landing is not really what people think it is. Another thing that takes time to adjust to, besides the healthcare system, is the culture and community in general. It's natural for us as Americans to be very excited about moving abroad, especially to Europe. But it's important to note that the people there are not feeling necessarily the same excitement that we are, because everybody has their own lives, everybody's busy, and the locals have been living there their entire lives, so they might not even notice when we move in there, or in some cases in areas that are really popular and suffering from over-tourism, they might actually be resistant to people coming in. So that's not to say don't move to these countries, but just to remember there's not going to be necessarily a welcome party at the airport unless, our people are picking you up at the airport. And, you might feel a little bit invisible at first when you get there. But over time, if you're very present and you're learning the language and you're getting out and about and meeting people, you will make friends and you will adjust over time. It might just take a little bit longer than you expect at first. So a good example is when I was staying in the UK, I was on a 6-month tourist visa, and I really felt like it was 6 months before I actually was feeling at home in the country, and then it was time to leave. But there were certain moments a few months in where I was invited to a barbecue at a friend's house and got to meet their friends, and then also went pretty much the entire time living there without meeting a single other American, that I really started to feel like I was being welcomed by people in the community. I was recognizing people on the street. I was getting invited to things, but it does take time and patience. A similar thing happened over my years traveling to the Netherlands. So when I first went there in 2013, it was just a few years before I started getting invited to people's weddings. And even last year, I was there for King's Day and hanging out with that same group of friends that I met the first time in 2013. So in these countries, it's realistic to make friends for life, but it does take time initially. Now, I've been talking a lot about the struggles and the realities of moving abroad, but one thing that actually is true is that the highlight reels that you see on Instagram are real, especially when it comes to the food, the culture, the scenery, the history, and everything that there is to offer in Europe. There have been plenty of examples when I've been literally pinching myself about where I was, what was around me, how beautiful things were, and that is the reality because Europe is such a beautiful region. The food and the markets in Europe are a part of real life, not a marketing campaign. I have very fond memories of running through Amsterdam's markets in the late afternoons to catch end-of-the-day deals, and also waking up at sunrise to shop the town square market in Bruges, Belgium, even buying watermelons off the side of the road in Montenegro. From the Roman Colosseum to the lavender fields in Provence, the Adriatic coast of Croatia, the German countryside and castles, or eating lunch in a chateau near Bordeaux, all of the fairy tale imagery you've been sold actually exists, and it's everywhere, not just in the most famous spots. Hi there, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe for free videos every week about travel, culture, and living abroad. You can also join the Abroad Club on my channel for special perks, such as members-only community posts, priority replies to your comments, and early access to new videos. And if you're seriously thinking about making a move yourself, check the link in the description or scan the QR code to learn how I can help you get there. Now, let's get back to the video. One of the best things about living in Europe is that you don't even need a car. In fact, many of my European friends don't even have a driver's license. You can get around the entire continent on trains and buses and the occasional cheap flight to a different country for the weekend. It's the kind of freedom that's even hard to describe to an American who's been driving everywhere since they were 16 years old. And another thing that isn't talked about enough is the cafe culture and public spaces in Europe. You can sit outside on a patio with a coffee or a glass of wine and watch the world go by, and that's just considered a normal way to spend an afternoon. There are plazas and parks where people are actually using them, lying on blankets, playing chess or checkers, sitting and talking, kids running around, people playing cards. And in Europe, you really see people living. Whereas in the US, it's common to see people moving from one private space to another, often in their vehicles. When people go out in America, it's often for entertainment, and I'm guilty of that as well. But when people go out in Europe, it's very much integrated with daily life and enjoyment. So if you're watching this trying to figure out if this is the right year for you to move or if you should wait longer, this is what I tell my clients. You can realistically move this year if you have a source of income that travels with you. This can be a remote job, a pension, a passive income stream, a business, or anything that funds your move. I don't typically recommend moving first and figuring out your income later. That's better if you're just going on vacation or going on a short sabbatical. But if you're planning to move long term, it's really important to have your income organized first, have your job, have your retirement funds, and then apply for a visa to be able to stay, not the other way around, unless you're going to a place that lets you go without a visa first. You're also likely ready to move now if you genuinely don't have anything holding you back. You'll know if that's you. It's if the only thing in the way is logistics and some of the ideas and fears whirling around in your head, then you're probably ready to get started. That being said, you could give yourself another year if you have a specific date that you're working towards, like selling your house or finding a job that lets you work from abroad. If the math isn't making sense yet, don't force it. Use the next year to plan properly, get your financial picture clean, talk to a tax expert, and start narrowing your country list. I have a moving abroad budget that you can download from the description or by scanning the QR code on the screen. You should also have some savings in the bank, at least 3 to 6 months of a runway. So with savings plus knowing where your paycheck or pension check is coming from, that can give you a good foundation to start planning your move. Of course, there are exceptions, and there are plenty of stories of people pulling off miracles by moving places and finding a job once they get there, or going to low-cost countries. But in 20 years of doing this, I can say that 99% of the people have their job and income sorted first before they move. One of the biggest mistakes I see first-time movers make is getting stuck in paralysis analysis. There does come a point to where research starts becoming a form of procrastination rather than preparation. So if that's you right now, then it's important to take that first step into planning for your move abroad, whether it's buying a book, I have Moving Abroad for Dummies, or hiring a professional that can be in your corner, and starting to take action on the things that you can actually plan for before it's too late, because eventually it could be. The good news is that the most common things that my clients say to me once they finally get abroad is, what took me so long? Often they waited months or years or even decades to move abroad, and then once they get there, they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad if they planned ahead, and they start to feel that relief that comes from actually achieving that dream. If you've decided that moving to Europe is right for you, the next step is deciding where to go. And click here to watch the next video where I walk you through exactly where I'd move if I were starting today. It's the next natural step after this one. I'll see you there.